So if you hold a stranger's hand for 1 second, you come across as aloof.
Right. Totally disconnected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you hold it for 4 seconds, well, then you're just creepy.
Yeah, that is way too long. Definitely creepy.
It really is. But 2 to 3 seconds. That is the unwritten rule of the perfect American handshake. And welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking at a massive stack of everyday English conversation guides, real-life transcripts, and phrase books. And we're going to decode them for you.
We really are. And there's a lot to unpack here.
There is. The mission today is to equip you, our listener, with the essential building blocks of everyday English. But we aren't just memorizing vocabulary lists here. We want to uncover the hidden psychology behind how native speakers actually communicate out in the real world.
Because that's the real mission, isn't it? I mean, anyone can hand you a list of words for the grocery store or, a formula for asking for directions.
Oh, for sure.
But true fluency isn't just about what you say. It's really about how and why you say it. And just a quick note for you listening, to help you catch every nuance, we're going to keep our pacing deliberate and clear throughout this deep dive.
Yeah, we're going to take our time.
Exactly. Nice and beginner-friendly. We'll explore the historical quirks, those quick social reflexes, and the unwritten rules that transform textbook English into the living, breathing language you actually hear on the street.
So let's start right where every interaction begins, which is the greeting.
Right.
I mentioned that 2 to 3 second handshake earlier.
Yeah, the sweet spot.
Right. And that specific duration is practically hardwired into American culture because it's precisely the amount of time it takes to say the phrase, nice to meet you, while making eye contact.
That's so true. The physical mechanic perfectly mirrors the verbal one.
It's like choreography. But when we look at the actual words used to greet people, the rules get surprisingly rigid based on the time of day.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you say good evening after 6 p.m. But good night is strictly forbidden as a greeting. You only ever say goodnight when you are walking out the door. I mean, why is there such a hard line there?
Well, it really comes down to what the phrase implies about the future of the interaction. So, good evening opens a door, it acknowledges the time of day, but it leaves room for the event to unfold.
Okay, that makes sense.
But good night, on the other hand, implies finality. It's intrinsically tied to the act of going to sleep or at least ending the day's activities. If you walk into a dinner party and say goodnight, you're subconsciously telling the host that the interaction is already over before it even began.
Oh, wow. So it's essentially a verbal exit sign.
Exactly. It's a stop sign for the conversation.
And context dictates everything else, too. Like with the professor, you'd use good morning. But with a close friend, you shift completely to something like, hi, how's it going? Or what's up?
Yeah, the tone shifts entirely.
But honestly, let me challenge the necessity of all this variation for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If the ultimate goal of language is just to transfer information, why not adopt a universal hello for everyone? From your boss to your best friend, wouldn't that just make the language infinitely more efficient?
Well, efficient, maybe. But human interactions aren't just about transferring raw data. They're about establishing and maintaining social hierarchy, respect, and intimacy.
Right. We are robots.
Exactly. Greetings act as social calibrators. When you choose to say what's up to a friend, you aren't just saying hello, you're actively signaling, hey, we're on equal footing and I feel relaxed around you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If you used a universal neutral hello for everyone, you'd completely strip away the ability to signal warmth or respect or playfulness. Adapting your greeting builds immediate rapport, and that lubricates the rest of the conversation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like clothing almost. Saying how do you do to a close friend is like wearing a tuxedo to the gym.
That is a perfect analogy.
And saying what's up to a professor is like wearing sweatpants to a job interview.
Yeah, you just wouldn't do it.
And it's not just the words we choose. It's the acoustics of how we actually say them. Looking through the transcripts you reviewed, native speakers do fascinating things with their vocal cues.
Oh, the intonation is everything.
Right. When close friends run into each other, they don't just say a clipped quick, hi. They stretch out that vowel sound. It's like, hi. They extend the pitch. Or, if they're asking, and you, they use a very sharp rising intonation to show genuine curiosity.
Yeah, and that stretching of the vowel sound is actually an acoustic signal of non-threat.
Wait, really? Like an evolutionary thing?
Yes. It's rooted in how human beings, and many other mammals, honestly, use higher-pitched, elongated sounds to indicate friendliness and a lack of aggression.
That is wild.
When you stretch out the I in hi, you're audibly relaxing. And when you reconnect with someone after a long absence, the vocabulary completely shifts to acknowledge that gap in time. You hear phrases like, long time no see, or what have you been up to?
I love the phrase long time no see because it completely ignores standard English grammar rules.
It totally throws them out the window.
It does. It's essentially a direct, word-for-word translation from an early Chinese pidgin English phrase used by traders centuries ago.
Yeah.
And it just stuck because of how punchy it is. It works perfectly.
Exactly. It's a phrase built for efficiency and warmth, completely bypassing the textbook.
Okay, so once you've calibrated your greeting, the day begins.
Ugh.
You have to move out into the world. Navigating public spaces, especially retail spaces, requires a completely different linguistic toolkit.
It really does. It's a whole new vocabulary.
Let's look at the supermarket. The geography alone is a trap for learners. Like, you have to walk down an aisle, and that's a word spelled A-I-S-L-E, where the S is entirely silent.
Yeah, the silent S in aisle is a perfect example of English being a historical collision of languages.
A collision is a good word for it.
Right. It comes from the French word for wing, aisle, mixed with the Latin word ala, and then later it got confused with the word isle, like an island. So you end up with this totally unpronounceable spelling.
That is so confusing for beginners.
It really is. But once you navigate that aisle, you need to find the dairy section and remember to check the expiration date. These are highly specific compound nouns that native speakers treat as single, unified concepts.
And when you're looking for those ingredients, you might tell a store worker, the recipe calls for flour, sugar, and butter. I find that phrasing calls for really compelling.
It's very visual, isn't it?
Yeah, we literally personify the recipe. It's like this piece of paper is demanding these ingredients from you.
And listen to how you just delivered that list. You said flour, sugar, and butter.
Uh-huh.
Native speakers naturally adopt a very rhythmic intonation when listing items like that. English is what linguists call a stress-timed language.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means the time it takes to say a sentence depends on the number of stressed syllables, not the total number of syllables overall.
Oh, interesting.
So when native speakers read a recipe, they naturally hit the heavy nouns like a drum beat. Flour, pause. Sugar, pause. Butter. It creates a predictable rhythm that makes the list so much easier for the listener to process.
That makes the interaction feel almost like a structured dance.
Yeah, polite little scavenger hunt.
Exactly. And that structure continues when you leave a grocery store and enter, say, a clothing store. The classic interaction usually starts with a worker asking, "Excuse me, how can I help you?"
The universal retail opener.
Right. And if you find a blue sweater you like, you ask to try it on. But grammatically, this is where a lot of learners hit a wall. Why do we say try it on instead of try on it? I mean, the action is try on, so why do we split it in half?
You're hitting on a concept known as separable phrasal verbs.
Separable phrasal verbs, okay.
Yeah. In English, a phrasal verb combines a standard verb with a preposition, like try and on, or turn and off. Because English has deep Germanic roots, it inherited a structure where the prefix or preposition can detach and literally move around the object.
So it sandwiches the object.
Exactly. In this case, the object it, which represents the sweater, gets sandwiched right in the middle. Say, try it on. This flexibility gives English an incredibly dynamic quality, allowing speakers to construct actions on the fly.
So we're essentially using ancient Germanic sentence structures just to buy a modern blue sweater.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's amazing. Let's take this a step further, though. We've talked about transactional language in supermarkets and clothing stores.
Yeah.
What happens when the context becomes more vulnerable? Like going to a pharmacy because you're sick. The language has to shift again, right?
Oh, it absolutely does. The pharmacy bridges this tricky gap between commerce and care.
Right, because you're not feeling well.
Exactly. You're no longer just looking for a product size, you're navigating personal health. You have to know the difference between over-the-counter medicine, which you can just pick up off the shelf yourself, and a prescription, which requires a doctor's medical authority.
And the instructions become highly prescriptive, too.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a dry, tickly cough, the pharmacist doesn't just ring you up and say goodbye.
No, they give you very specific directions.
Yeah, they'll tell you to take 1 spoonful 3 times a day after meals and avoid cold drinks. The interaction completely changes from, how can I help you, to, here is how you fix your problem.
Yet even in these highly structured transactional environments, there's still this deep human desire for connection and humor.
Oh, absolutely.
We actually found an incredible interaction in one of the real-life audio transcripts. It was between a fruit vendor and a regular customer.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The customer wanted to buy some fresh tomatoes but was hesitating. They were worried the tomatoes would spoil because they lived alone. So, to close the sale, the vendor playfully scooped up a whole bunch of tomatoes and said, "Don't separate these little guys. They came here as a family."
Nobody's left behind. It's just brilliant.
It really is.
It's this gentle, humorous pressure that totally diffuses the transactional nature of handing over money. It turns a purchase into an inside joke between neighbors.
Which really highlights that the ultimate goal of these everyday interactions isn't just acquiring tomatoes or cough syrup. It's about establishing a sense of community.
That brings us to a critical pivot. You've got your groceries, you've got your cough syrup, but now you need to find a new location in this city. You're navigating the physical world outside.
Right, you have to get to where you're going.
But I have to stop and push back on this section of the guides. We have an entire chapter dedicated to asking strangers for directions, but, I mean, we all carry smartphones with satellite navigation in our pockets now.
That's true.
Is learning how to ask a stranger for directions actually an obsolete skill in the modern world? Do people still do this?
It's a very fair question, but I'd argue the skill is absolutely not obsolete. On a purely practical level, technology fails.
That's a good point.
One of the case studies we looked at actually involved a tourist in Chicago whose GPS completely lost its signal because of the density of all the skyscrapers.
The urban canyon effect.
Exactly. But on a deeper level, asking for directions is an exercise in social vulnerability. When you approach a local and admit you are lost, you are initiating a profound cultural exchange.
Because you're asking for their help.
Yes. You are lowering your guard, which almost always prompts the local to respond with empathy. They might say something like, "Oh, I know how you feel. I get lost here too." That shared empathy instantly diffuses the stress of being in a totally unfamiliar environment.
That makes total sense. It's not just about finding the museum. It's about confirming you're in a safe place with helpful people.
Precisely.
But there's a strict protocol for how you initiate that vulnerability, right? You can't just walk up to someone on the street and demand, "Where is the library?"
No, that would be incredibly rude.
Right. You have to use polite openers like, "Excuse me, could you tell me?" And when you use that opener, a massive grammar shift happens.
This is one of the trickiest parts for learners.
It really is. You don't say, "Could you tell me where is the library?" You say, "Could you tell me where the library is?" The subject literally moves.
It does.
Why does politeness change the fundamental word order of the sentence?
It acts as a linguistic buffer. Direct questions can feel very aggressive because they demand immediate information from the listener.
Like an interrogation.
Exactly. By turning it into an indirect question, starting with something like, "Could you tell me?" you are essentially asking about their ability to help, rather than demanding the location itself.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, because the core of the sentence is now, "Could you tell me," the second part, "where the library is," reverts to standard statement word order. It softens the blow. It protects the listener from feeling cornered.
You're basically padding the request.
Yes, padding is a great way to describe it.
And once you've successfully navigated that grammar shift, you have to decode the spatial language in their answer. They won't just give you GPS coordinates.
No, never.
They'll use prepositions and landmarks. They'll say the building is across from the bank or next to the park. Go get to that Chicago example, the resident didn't give street names. They told the tourist to walk past Millennium Park until they saw the two big lion statues outside the Art Institute.
Because visual landmarks are how human brains actually map environments.
Right.
And notice the physical cues that accompany those directions. Native speakers will often point and heavily stress the demonstrative pronoun. They won't just casually say, "It's that way." They'll physically gesture and say, "It's that way."
With lots of emphasis.
Yes. The vocal stress acts almost like a verbal highlighter pen.
And if you're taking public transit instead of walking, you have to navigate the concept of rush hour, which is a wonderfully ironic term considering it refers to the times usually 7:30 to 9 a.m. and 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. in the U.S., when traffic is so terrible that absolutely nobody is rushing anywhere.
Right, you're just sitting in gridlock.
Exactly. And if you're standing at the bus stop and you see the bus pulling away right as you arrive, you learn the language of minor tragedy. You say, "Oh no, we just missed it." The word "just" is carrying all the weight of your disappointment there.
It really is. It's the difference between missing a bus by 10 minutes and missing it by 10 seconds. The word "just" quantifies the frustration.
So true. So we've navigated the physical streets, the traffic, the directions. Now we have to navigate the most complex environment of all, the figurative streets. Idioms.
Ah, idioms.
Yeah, if you want to move beyond just surviving in English to actually connecting with native speakers, you really have to master figurative language.
I've always thought of idioms like the cheat codes in a video game.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right, because you can play the whole game without them, just using the basic controls. But if you learn the cheat codes, you suddenly unlock secret levels, you find hidden shortcuts, and you instantly prove to the other players that you know the game inside and out. That is a highly accurate way to frame it. Idioms signal that you've moved past the textbook and into the living culture. They build instant trust.
They really do.
Take the phrase, hold your horses. If you translate that literally, a listener is going to be looking around for actual farm animals.
Which would be hilarious.
Right. But figuratively, it means calm down, or don't rush into this. Or if someone says, my lips are sealed, they aren't talking about physical glue. They're promising to keep your secret safe.
Or looking at the clock and saying how time flies. Time doesn't literally have wings, but it captures the sensation of a fleeting moment perfectly.
It's so poetic when you break it down.
It is. And these figurative phrases are deeply embedded in how we show hospitality, too. When you arrive at a friend's house after your long day of errands, they might greet you by saying, my house is your house.
Which is such a beautiful transfer of ownership. It's telling the guest to abandon the rigid rules of being a visitor and just assume the comfort of a resident.
Make yourself at home.
Exactly. But idioms and set phrases aren't just for being welcoming. They are absolutely vital for setting polite boundaries.
Oh, how so?
Well, English-speaking cultures, particularly in commerce or casual interactions, often avoid direct confrontation. If you're back in that clothing store and the salesperson hands you a bright yellow sweater that you absolutely hate, saying a blunt no feels entirely too aggressive to a native speaker.
Right, it feels like you're slamming a door in their face.
Exactly. So instead, you use a polite deflection. You say, I'd rather have it in blue. You aren't attacking the yellow sweater. You're just expressing a preference for an alternative. It saves face for everyone involved.
But when you truly need to draw a hard line, the language is there for that too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like if someone asks you for a favor that is completely unreasonable, you don't have to be soft. You can say, it is out of the question.
A very firm boundary.
Yeah. Or if a situation's just gone too far, you drop the idiom, enough is enough. It's fascinating how English provides these prefabricated phrases to help you manage conflict without having to invent the words yourself in the heat of the moment.
They are prepackaged social tools, and mastering them is often considered the final boss of language learning.
The final boss, yeah.
When you drop an idiom into a conversation naturally, you erase the boundary between learner and local. You prove that you don't just understand the dictionary definitions of English words, you prove you understand the cultural heartbeat behind them.
Wow. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Let's trace our steps back a bit.
Sounds good.
We started by calculating the perfect 3-second handshake and choosing the exact right greeting for the time of day. We decoded the silences in the grocery aisle and learned the rhythmic drum beat of reading a recipe.
Flour, sugar, butter.
Exactly. We watched the language shift from the transactional geometry of trying on a sweater to the vulnerable pair of buying medicine. We abandoned our GPS to ask for directions, cushioning our requests with polite, indirect questions. And finally, we unlocked the cheat codes of the language, using idioms to politely decline yellow sweaters, promise to keep secrets, and make guests feel entirely at home.
When you pull back and look at all those steps together, the underlying theme is remarkably clear. Language is a social technology.
A social technology, I love that.
Yeah. Every single grammatical quirk we discussed today, from separable phrasal verbs to the shifting subject in a question, it all exists to help humans navigate relationships. English isn't just a set of rules. It's a shared agreement on how we show empathy, respect, and connection.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a thought experiment.
Oh, I like these.
For the rest of the day, turn the lens away from English and point it at your own native language. Pay attention to the hidden matrix of rules that you follow effortlessly. How long do people hold eye contact in your culture before it gets uncomfortable?
That's a good one.
What bizarre animal idioms do you use that would sound completely unhinged if translated directly? How do you soften a direct question to avoid offending a stranger on the street? The next time you open your mouth to speak your mother tongue, Just notice the invisible scaffolding holding your sentences together.
It's eye-opening when you actually pay attention to it.
It really is. Once you realize how brilliantly complex your own everyday phrases are, you'll gain a massive appreciation for what it takes to master English. Keep exploring those connections, and we'll see you next time.